Naveen Kulkarni also joining us this morning. Naveen, good to have you with us. I guess the thing to discuss is really what to watch out for now in 2020. Which are the themes that you're going to be most bullish on?
See, so 2020 is going to be a very interesting year. So we are pretty much closing the year on high levels, which if we start the year, which this was not expected, and in between also there were quite a few challenges that we witnessed. But having said that, the global construct for equity market continues to remain positive. More importantly, we are seeing two major themes emerging. One is there is a lot more interest in value stocks, right? The likes of metal stocks have started doing better. Banks are doing, the larger banks are doing much better. And the second theme, I think, which I think is expected to emerge over the next 12 months could be the mid caps or the high quality mid caps. Small caps might take a little more time, but the mid caps could start doing much better in the next 12 months, considering that the volatility around 12 levels is a very good setup for the mid caps and mid cap kind of allocation to significantly increase. So that is the overall theme that we are banking on and bullish on for the next 12 months.
Okay, fair enough. Naveen, just wanted to also get in a take as to what the outlook is on individual sectors. We're banking big on the overall rural theme picking up, and after the trend having been fairly soft so far, do you think that there is merit in this story?
You see, there is a clear-cut merit in the story, primarily because, see, we are likely to see a very good Rabi season, right? So from that perspective, if we see the sowing patterns and things like that, so where we have done some bit of channel checks, we've seen there is quite a bit of improvement in Maharashtra in two crops, right? So overall, the farm income and the rural income should rise significantly over next 6 to 12 months. So that's going to be a major theme. From the perspective of what to play, we are quite bullish on escorts. So escorts is one of our top picks in the mid cap space as well as in the auto space, right? So one is, of course, tractors as a play. We see that the cycle has shortened in terms of the turnaround which can happen. Second is when the rural income were to rise, and probably in the next 12 months, we could see two things. One is the earnings picking up, and the second thing for something like escorts is re-rating to happen, right? So that essentially gives a significant upside to a stock pick like escorts. Apart from that, in consumption space, see, Dabur is a very, very traditional, I would say, that rural play, but the company is going through a very, very different kind of phase in terms of strategy and development. So I would not put Dabur as a pure rural play, but as an overall consumption play where it makes a lot of sense to allocate more capital there. So I would be very choosy in terms of playing the rural theme, but there are certain ideas which make a lot of sense to invest at this point in time.
Okay. You are looking at the broader markets now, starting to see more opportunity there, and particularly in light of the recovery. So again, would that be thematically, or would you be looking deeper into specific stocks where you see that earnings catch up?
See, recovery is, of course, a very, very critical aspect that we are looking at. So something which is going to be, I think, a clear-cut standout play on the recovery cycle will be the auto sector, right? So if I were to look at, let's say, a pure consumer staples kind of a play, Hindustan Unilever on an average over a last 20-year period would have delivered a volume growth of around 6%, right? Currently, last quarter, they delivered a volume growth of 5%. So essentially, the staples kind of play are plus minus 1 or 2% over the long-term average in good times and bad times. So that's not something. But the discretionary part in the consumption theme, which is where I think autos fits in, whether it is the CV cycle or whether it is the PV cycle or whether it's two-wheelers, I think there is a lot of there's a case to play the recovery theme from an autos perspective. Apart from that, banks we are quite bullish on. Coming just back to the auto theme, what we like essentially, as I just mentioned, Escorts is one name. Second, a big play which can be on the recovery cycle could be Ashok Leyland. Apart from that, Maruti is another play which can give decent upside. We are positive on the stock. And I would say that the last name which I would be quite bullish on would be Eicher Motors. So these are the 4 stocks in the auto sector where I would allocate most of my capital. Apart from that, the large banks of course are something, and there are value plays there where we would allocate more capital.
Sure. What about IT, Naveen? Valuations there also looking comfortable now. Does it merit a look in the new year?
See, see, from an IT perspective, what we like essentially is that the earning visibility in that sector always tends to be reasonably strong, right? Second is cash flows, of course, are never a challenge in that sector. And most of the companies are reasonably sound in terms of balance sheet. They don't need to raise capital. So all the positives are known. Valuations are reasonable. Both there are names in the large cap space as well as in the mid cap space which merit looking at. In the large cap space, we like Infosys, as I've been talking about that name for a while now. The valuations are quite reasonable. Operating performance is quite good. So that's something which stands out. Apart from that, in the mid cap space, of course, we do continue to like something like Sonata Software, or Mindtree. I think is going to be an interesting play to look at from a quarter-on-quarter improvement perspective.
All right, let's talk about a few other specific names then as well, Naveen, that are on your radar. You've got IT Industries that you're bullish on, Coromandel. You know, if we could, even an Escorts, I mean, if you could pick a couple and just talk us through the rationale, why they're looking attractive to you.
See, Aarti Industries is again a long-term play. It's not a short-term play. So one is in the chemical space, if in the specialty chemical space and their focus is on benzene derivatives, right? So if I were to look at one name where they have a certain moat, Aarti Industries clearly stands out. Second is in terms of the kind of deals that they have done, right, in the space, right? So that's another. There is they are consistently investing capital where they understand the category well, right? So there is a long-term growth path. Apart from that, in the last quarter, we saw that some bit of gross margin compression and the revenues being lower than what it was estimating, but it was essentially because of the low product margin business which did not do well, whereas the high product margin business have been doing better, right? So strategically the company continues to do well. This is the time to accumulate stock where the valuations have corrected a bit and it looks reasonable. Coromandel is a more straightforward story where we are backing on the Rabi crop, right? So we are looking at a better sowing season for Rabi. The Rabi output is going to be pretty good, and essentially Coromandel is a very, very straightforward beneficiary of that. Apart from that, the quality and management and everything continues to be very, very strong. So Coromandel is more I would say a medium term kind of a play. Aarti is a very long term kind of a play. Escorts I already talked about. It's a very straightforward story on the rural growth theme and the re-rating that can happen and the earnings growth that the company can deliver over the next 2 years.
So now, Naveen, going into the next year, if you had to pinpoint 3 factors or triggers for the markets to, see a significant leg up, or, factors that are likely to impact the markets, what would they be?
See, the biggest factor, of course, for the markets is still going to be the economic recovery. See, the budget, which I think we talk, there is a lot of music and sound and noise which happens around the budget. But I think the clear-cut factor there will be to look at what fiscal deficit target that the government gives and where they are right now. So the borrowing program for the government will be a very, very clear-cut number, because that does determine the cost of funds in the overall economy. So that's the second factor. The first factor, as I mentioned, economic recovery, and the high frequency indicators, whether it is the auto numbers, whether it is some of the other factors like the IIP numbers and all, will be very, very carefully watched. And the third factor will be the constructive global setup, right? So global scenario, whether it is in terms of trade deal, apart from that there is US elections next year, right? So how the global market continues to emerge in the next 12 months is going to be very, very critical. If the global scenario continues to be constructive, I think the Indian markets will continue to do well, and if supported by some of the domestic factors that I just talked about, I think the markets will do very, very well in the next 12 months.
And those banking bets, what is it that you like? Is it just the private sector names? Do you have any mid-cap preferences?
See, we do have mid-cap preferences like DCB Bank, but lately there are some challenges. It's a little long-term bet, but SBI is something which stands out very, very clearly in terms of the resolutions that we are witnessing and the benefits that the bank is going to enjoy. Apart from that, if we see the overall improvement that has been taking place, right? So probably this year they might do a 9.5% kind of an ROE, and next year the ROE will improve. Apart from that, the valuations are quite reasonable, right? So SBI is a clear-cut standout, and also there is subsidiary unlocking, right? So there are multiple factors for SBI. So SBI right now is our top pick in the whole banking space, right? So followed that with let's say an Axis and ICICI, right? So not just the private banks, SBI definitely makes the cut now, and it's a standout pick in the banking space for us now.
Naveen, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us, and wishing you a happy holiday season.